Alright, here's the deal. We're starting with a brand new project, just an empty canvas with a lonely activity. If you're not sure how to create a new project, no worries. I've got another video for that. So what do we see on the screen right now? Well, it's basically a blank page with a boring hello world message. But we're about to spice things up. Here's the plan. We're gonna slap a button right below this text, and while we're at it, let's give this text a makeover also. Now, here's the cool part. When we dive into the code and click on this text view, the design view highlights that very text view. We're gonna change the text right here. I'm thinking something like click here to go to the next page. I also want to change the text color. Just type text color and select whatever color you like. I'm going with black for now. See, whatever we do in the code, the design view reflects it instantly. It's like having a real-time preview. Now check this out. When I click on this text view, you see those lines? Those are like ropes that keep our text in the place. We call them constants. They are like guidelines that tells our text where to sit on the page. And these constants are not just for show, they're right here in the code as well. It's like saying, hey, bottom of this text, you're connected to the bottom of the parent. And guess who's the parent? Well, it's this thing called constant layout. It is basically a layout that holds everything together. Now when I click this, you might spot a blue line. Hopefully it's visible to you. That's our constant layout. Check out its size right here in the code. It says layout width and layout height, and both are set to match parent. That means the height and width of this layout matches its parent, that is the entire screen. So this layout completely fills up the screen. And this text view right here is the child of this layout. Now look here, its width and height are a bit different than the constant layout. It is wrap content here. Now what does it mean? Well, that's where the blue border comes into play. It shows how big our text view is. And right now it's just wrapping around the text. Let's change it and see what happens. I have set it to 50 dp, and remember, always use dp for any kind of size. Notice that its width is fixed now. And when I change it to 100, it's again a fixed width. Now let's change the height as well. And now both width and height are fixed now, so the text doesn't fit. But what wrap content does is that it adjusts the width and height to wrap around the content itself. So changing the text will also change the size of text view. So that's all about wrap content. Now let's throw in a button inside the layout. Just write button and hit enter and set the height and width to wrap content. And let's keep the text as click me and close the tag now. And the button pops up in the screen. Oh, I see it's throwing an error at us. Let's see what it is. It says that view is not constant. So just like this text view, this button also needs some constants to tell it where it needs to be placed. Now, I want this button to be just below the text view, but we cannot just drag it here like this. When looking at it, it just looks fine. But the X and Y position of this button are fixed now. That means we are telling this button that exactly how far it has to be from the X and the Y. And here it is 154 dp from the X and 401 dp from the Y. This seems fine, but it would be a big issue when we are dealing with different sized screen. Let me show you. We can change the screen size from here, and you'll be able to see what is the problem here. So what's the solution for it? And that's why we have constants. So let's remove this X and Y thing, and what we want is this button to be always below this text view. So let's do that. Now let's connect the left, right and bottom of the button to the left, right and bottom of the parent. But the top of the button goes to the bottom of this text. Now the button automatically comes at the center of all of its constants. But we can change the position of this button with respect to its constants. I can slide it way up. You see in the code, it adds a vertical bias. and its value can be from 0 to 1, where 0 means that the element is way up and 1 means it is way down, so you can adjust it accordingly. Similarly, there is a horizontal bias as well, which varies from 0 to 1 again. Now we'll bring the button right below this text. Now I want a fixed gap between this text and this button. So what I'll do is I'll add a top margin to this button. You can go ahead and play around with these numbers and see what it does. Now we have our design ready. Alright, before we dive any deeper, let's tackle this yellow warning. It's giving us a heads up about hard-coded string. But why that's a big deal? Well, it's suggesting that we use something called a string resource. So what's that all about? Let's see inside the resource directory, inside values folder, we've got a file named strings.xml. That's our string resource file. Let's pop that open. This is the place where we define our string resources. Now, heading back to our main activity, if we hover over the warning, it's got an option to extract the string resource. Let's click it. It's asking for a name and a value for our new resource. Let's call it next page text, and the value is what's currently written here, and hit OK. So what just happened? It created that string as a resource and assigned a name to it. Back in our main activity, it swiped out the plain old text with the new string resource that we just created. Now whenever we want to use a resource, we start with an @ symbol, then specify the type of the resource, followed by a slash and the name of the resource. Now check this out. We are doing it for the text color too. We're referencing a color resource called black here. Now let's head to the color resource file. You'll see there's already a color resource for black with the name black and its value in RGB hex format. You can add any color you like in this resource file. Want to add a vibrant red? Go for it. And now we can use it as a text color by writing @color/red, and there you go, the text goes red. Now just like we did with the text view, we can create the string resource for this button also. But this time we are going to do it manually. Let's go to strings.xml and let's call this click me. And now we can reference it right here in our main activity. Now, you might be wondering why we are stashing everything in the resources when we can just hard code it. Well, it's all about making the app flexible and ready for changes down the road. When it comes to creating apps that support multiple languages and ensuring easy customization of the app's appearance, using resource files is a fantastic approach. It simplifies the process and makes your app more flexible. Let's see what does that mean. Consider you want to create an app that supports multiple languages. Now how are you going to handle all the text that you would be dealing with? In this scenario, you can use string resource file. For that, you will create multiple string resource files that correspond to different languages. And each of these resource files will contain the same resource IDs, but with different values in each of these files. And these different values will be different languages for the same text. And now when the app starts, we can ask the user that which language they want to use. And based on their response, we can tell the app that which resource file it needs to use. So let's say when the user selects English, we would tell the app that use this resource file. In this way, we would be able to maintain all the strings separately. Now, let's see why we need color resource file. Now, let's consider you have designed an app such that all the text color in the app are red. So let's make a color resource with the name text color and value as red. Now that we have made it, we can reference it from the activity. For this type of scenario, whenever you would be using text view in the app, you would be assigning a text color that would be referencing this text color. Now, let's say one day you change your mind and thought let's make all the text blue. Then you just have to go to that color resource and change its value to blue. And when you come back to your activity, you can see the text has turned blue. So it makes it very easy to customize the look and feel of the app. That is the reason it is recommended to use resource files whenever possible, but it's completely optional. Let's go to the main thing now. So what I want to do is open a new screen when we click this button. For that, we must have a screen to open first. So let's create an activity called greetings activity. And once it is created, let's throw in a text view inside of it. And it will say, hello there, greetings. Now let's connect the constraints and add a text color to it. Now we're also going to change the size of the text. So just write text size. So far, whenever we add a size anywhere, we put DP. But for text, we have to write SP. You can also add a style to the text like this. And now we have our greetings activity ready. I'm gonna add a button here also. This button will also say click me, and this time it will be on top of the text. And now the activity is complete. Now, before adding the click action, let's just run the app and see what we have till now. It will take some time to install. Once it is installed, you can see that the app is open and we are at the main activity. Let's try and click this button, but notice that it doesn't do anything. So let's close this and we are going to add the action to it. I want that whenever someone clicks this button, the new activity opens up. For doing that, the logic will go inside this main activity.kotlin file. But before telling this button that your click effect is this, we need some way to identify or reference that button in our Kotlin file. For that, we are going to give some ID to the button. Just write ID, press enter and give an ID. I've given the ID as next button. Now back to the Kotlin file, we are going to create a variable that references this button. And this is how we reference an element. Just write find view by ID, and inside these angle brackets we are going to add the type of the element, which is button in this case, and then provide the ID of that element. That would be r.id.nextButton. And sometimes you get this error that it is not able to find that ID, even though you have created that ID. When it happens, just go up here inside build, click on clean project, and the error will go away. Now that we have our variable, we want to provide the action to it. For that, write next button dot set on click listener. And whenever you click that button, this block of code will run. So whatever you write inside it, that will be our action. And for jumping onto a new activity, we use something called an intent. So let's create an intent. I'll call this greetings intent, and it will be equal to a new intent, which will take two parameters. First is the context, that is this. So we are telling it to use this activity's context, and the second parameter takes the activity where we want to go, and we write it like this. Now we write start activity and pass this intent, and that's it. This small piece of code will open a new activity. Now similar to this, let's add an action to the button on the second activity as well. I'm planning to change this text when the button is clicked. So for that, we need to reference this button as well as this text in our Kotlin file. So let's give an ID to both of them. ID for the button would be change text button, and the text view ID I'm putting as text. Look, we got an error when we changed the ID of the text view. This is because this button was dependent on that text view, and we have changed its ID. So now the button has no idea where that text view is, because it knows it by its ID, which we have changed. So we need to tell this button that the ID has changed. So let's do that, and the error is gone now. Now we reference these two elements in the greetings activity.kotlin file, and just how we did in the main activity, I'll add a click listener to this button. But this time the block inside the click listener will be different. We will say greetings text equal to magic. So whenever someone clicks this button, the text changes to magic. Now let's run the app again. Alright, so you can see in the app, when I click this button, the new activity opens up, and when I click this other button, the text changes to magic. And that's how we have converted our plain old boring app into an interactive app.